A very good morning, everyone. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So today is a very special day for all of us at St. Aloysius College. We are going to have an international webinar. But just before that, when you just look back to the past year, on 15th August 2021, as we were celebrating the independence in India, a very different mode or a different incident was happening in Kabul, the fall of Kabul to Taliban. And the moment I heard this news, my heart skipped a beat, thinking about my dear friend and former classmate, Hamid from Kabul. I immediately WhatsApped him and I tried to contact him, and I was worried about his well-being. But at the same time, he responded quickly and he said that as of now, he was not in Kabul, he was in Germany. But however, there was a concern for his family who was in Kabul. So anyway, we have here today dear Hamid, Aaqil Shah, who is hailing from Kabul and presently a PhD candidate at Kassel University, Germany. We are all eagerly waiting to hear his talk on Afghanistan, the past and the current crisis. And we would like to know more about the present situation there. Now, let me get to my formal role of welcoming the dignitaries. First of all, I welcome our dear principal, Dr. Chako Jospi, who constantly encourages us and supports us to organize programs of academic interest. I welcome you, sir, to the program.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next, I welcome our dear resource person, Mr. Hamid Aaqil Shah. In spite of the time difference, it's early morning in Germany, I suppose. He has woken up just to talk to our dear students who have assembled in the hall right now. And he'll be talking to the students, and there are some other participants who have joined online also. I welcome you, Hamid, to St. Aloysius College.
Yeah, thank you, Melvin, and all students and the principal, including the professors who hear me.
Thank you, Hamid. Next, I welcome Dr. Shelly Johnny, who has been a strong support for me, and whose department, political science department, will be is jointly organizing this program along with me. Next, I welcome all the faculty and teachers who have joined offline and online in this program. I welcome all of you to this program. Last but not the least, I welcome all my dear students who have assembled here. This is a new mode, a new normal that is going to set in. That is a hybrid mode, because majority of the participants of this lecture are seated at the auditorium, and there are few who are participating online. So we are going in a hybrid mode. So once again, I welcome all of you. Next, I invite our dear principal to give a felicitation note. Sir.
Thank you. The speaker of the day, Mr. Hamid Aaqil Shah, the head of the Department of History, Mr. Melvin Luke George, head of the Department of Political Science, Dr. Shelley John V, other faculty members of the college, other participants from a different part of the world who are attending online, and my dear students. I'm extremely happy to note that the Department of History and Political Science of this college together is organizing a topic which is so relevant and which is not so easily available to all of us to listen to. And the topic that Afghan, the past and the current crisis, is being delivered by a person who is basically a native of that country. And it's very difficult for us sitting here to listen to people who belong to the place where actually this crisis is going on. Though many of us, most of us, may not be having a friend or anyone known to us in Afghanistan, all of us are really concerned of the well-being of the people there after the invasion happened there. So today we get a very good opportunity to listen to what is actually happening there and what is its current scenario. On behalf of the college, I once again welcome Mr. Hamid Shah for this program, and I congratulate the Department of History and Political Science for taking the initiative. And this new normal mode is also giving us a lot of opportunity, because otherwise it wouldn't have been possible to have a seminar like this, because the resource person is in Germany and the listeners are spread across the world. So let us make the best use of this opportunity that we have got, though out of a very grim scenario. So as we always say, there is always hope in all grim scenarios. So this blended mode of seminars, I hope, will give us more opportunities to listen to international speakers. Thank you very much.
Next, I call upon Rehma Muhammad Ali, who is one of my students, to introduce the speaker for today. Rehma.
Good morning to each one of you present today. It is my pleasure to welcome everyone to this beautiful session. I am very pleased to introduce the Honorable Speaker, Mr. Hamid Aaqil Shah. He holds a degree in social law, a social work profession from the University of Applied Sciences, Frankfurt. He has done his Master of Arts in Global Political Economy and International Development from the University of Kassel, Germany, and another Master's in Social Work from Tata Institute of Social Sciences in Mumbai. And also, he is working as a social worker in Tekani, Kassel, in the residential care services to refugees, children, and young families, and is also communication assistant with the Youth Welfare Department in the Administrative District of Kassel for non-residential care services to refugees. He has also worked as the National Program Quality Coordinator, Action Aid International Afghanistan in Kabul, and was also a Senior Program Leader, Action Aid International Afghanistan. He had a short stint as Education Division Coordinator, InterSource in Kandahar, Afghanistan. A native of Kabul, he is currently a PhD candidate at the University of Kassel, Germany. That's all about him. He really is a role model for young people like us. We all try to gain knowledge. So I hope this is a good and effective session for us. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Rehma, for that introduction. Now it's all ears for Hamid. Yes, Hamid.
Yeah, thank you all, Melvin, particularly also the principal, and thank you, Rehma, for the presentation about our brief profile. I think I remember the days of myself being bachelor student in University of Delhi and then master in TISS. It reminded me the hall that I see is also like, I feel like I'm sitting there. So thanks a lot. As Melvin, you said, through 15th August, I was also thinking and wishing friends happy Independence Day in India, but parallel, I was going through deep sorrow and stress, more also psychological stress. The turbulences politically, particularly in Afghanistan, having the opportunity to present myself on behalf of Afghanistan and what has happened and what is the current scenario. I thought of the presentation, and also the department is the history and political science. And I think historians are more interested and keen to understand somewhat question what has happened, when it has happened, why it has happened, how it has happened. So these 4 questions, I'm trying to highlight that. In order to highlight that, I think you might be knowing better as myself. You need to go to the history and to know the root causes, what has happened, how it happened, and why it happened. I would now, maybe I would try to share my presentation online. So I hope it works with this Zoom. Generally it works. So I would just share my screen. I think. So
Yeah, it's coming. It's coming.
It's coming. Okay. Yeah. As mentioned, my presentation, it's a brief presentation. It will be about Afghanistan. It is divided in 4 parts or 4 phases. I will take you back to the history, recent history about last 50, 60 years. What has happened in Afghanistan that we are having an unfortunate situation or scenario or circumstances in Afghanistan. Afterwards, touching upon the timeline, I will talk about Afghanistan version 1. Most nowadays they call Taliban 1.0 or 1.0, and Afghanistan in Taliban times in Taliban's 2.0. So this means that it is discussion in academic circle and also political debates about the Taliban 1.0 and 2.0 or 1. Taliban version 1 or Taliban version 2, what if there are some differences? I think you might be also having some question or in mind going on what is the difference between the first and the second. So hopefully in the end of the presentation, we'll be glad to have your viewpoints or question or concern to give with my first-hand information that I have from Afghanistan. And then the last part of the presentation will highlight the current scenario, the current crisis in Afghanistan, and what is happening in Afghanistan. So, as mentioned in the history, to understand a problem, you need to go deeply, you need to dig out. Particularly in Afghanistan, the problem started in 60, 70, but before that was already was surfing of problems of ideologies in Afghanistan, ideologies. So in the global circuit or the global stage, the ideology of capitalism, the ideology of socialism. Well, in Afghanistan was there was the ideology that surfaced this radicalism or extremism and the socialism. The president that we have now was not used to be president back in 1960s and 70s. We had monarchy system. So the General Muhammad Dawood Khan, who was the cousin of the King Zahir Shah. He became the prime minister. He was open, he was, but radical in his ideas in reform. He also was very keen to have progress in Afghanistan, have development in Afghanistan, and that in the neighboring countries that time, the USSR, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, was having border direct in the east northern Afghanistan. So he reached to the USSR, former USSR, for economic and military assistance, and also in order to reach his dreams or vision in Afghanistan of development. In the process of his ideas and struggle, he, in 1957, he also tried to open universities for women in Afghanistan. In 1973, Dawood Khan, also with the help of his military network, overthrown the monarchy system in Afghanistan. King Zahir Shah at that time was in Italy, and he established the Republic of Afghanistan with strong ties with the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. So this, what has led to revolt or to have a coup is because of his idea was not entertained by King Zahir Shah. And he was also in idea of single party system in Afghanistan. He was more that has to be led by people, but by a single party. And that was his major reason that he dismantled the monarchy system into the Republic of Afghanistan. And that time was also the People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan was also in emergence. The founding member was Nur Muhammad Tarakai. He was having the ideological differences between that time the president of Afghanistan, Dawood Khan, and Nur Muhammad Tarakai. With the help of his close aides of Nur Muhammad Tarakai from PDPA, he assassinated Dawood Khan in 1978. So in that late 50s, in the 60s decade, and the first half of 70s, that was the introduction of reform, social reform, political reform, initiated by Dawood Khan, followed by Nur Muhammad Tarakai. Nur Muhammad Tarakai went a further step. He started to have more land reform, and also some of the cultural practices that were existing. For example, the child marriages. For example, Dawood Khan also, with the help of his close aide, also introduced that has to be consent marriages and all. And also the Afghanistan is used to be a tribal country, tribal-based, tribal-built nation, multi-ethnic communities, ethnic nationalities exist in Afghanistan for centuries. That was not acceptable for those who were strongly embedded in traditional culture in Afghanistan, particularly the ethnic leaders. And that time in the 1960s, the young students who become, later I would talk about it, become radical Islamists, radical conservatives, and they had to take refuge in Pakistan, and there they become more radical. So you see the idea of socialism in 1960s, late 50s, and early 70s was to open Afghan society for development, to open Afghan community as a whole for progress thinking, but that confronted with radicalism in Afghanistan, with conservatism based on the Islamic conservative thoughts those were having by the young Islamist leaders in the University of Kabul. This conservatism and also clashes of ideas led to the armed revolt against the social reforms. So it was about the ideas, the clashes of idea. And in 1979, 24 December, the US's army entered in Afghanistan in order to support the PDPA government that time, the People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan, that was. But that intervention to support the government of that time led to the violent resistance. Violent resistance started in the rural areas. The rural areas in Afghanistan, I would say the rural provinces in Afghanistan, and it started by the name of Islam, and to counter the idea of openness, counter the idea of equal rights, to counter the idea of enlightenment, and considered as anti-Islam, supported by the neighboring countries, and also now here played the role of the, I would say, during the last in the 10 decades of 1979 and 1989 is the idea of socialism, and then the capitalism, and then Islamism. The United States in the West, with the support of Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, they started to empower, they started to equip with the material, that is with the ammunition, with weapons, and also with non-material, with ideological basis. They radicalized more young Afghans in Pakistan camps in order to fight the idea of anti-Islam in Afghanistan, which led to over 1.5 million innocent people lost in Afghanistan. And that struggle in Afghanistan of Soviet troops had to leave in 1989, and that withdrawal of the USSR forces led to also civil war. In 1991, the Dr. Najibullah government was driven out from Kabul by the Mujahideen, those factions of, as I mentioned, the young Islamist leaders in the University of Kabul in the 60s, 70s. They were the leaders of that Mujahideen in 1980s and 90s. They started to fight. So the people who were, or the leaders who were struggling or who were fighting for this name of Islam, they got themselves in tussle, in war of tussle for power. That has led to the rise of Taliban, the civil war between the radical Islamist faction in Afghanistan in 1990s led to the rise of Taliban. And within the span of 2 years, from 1994 till 1996, the Taliban were able to get almost 90% of the territory in Afghanistan. And when they captured Kabul, they started to impose hard light, the radical version of Islam in Kabul. I also witnessed that. It was not an easy time for us in Afghanistan. The Taliban ruled for almost 5 years. The 2001 United States intervention led to in Afghanistan because of the September 11 attacks. I remember that time I was in Kabul. I was helping my family, the livelihood. I heard that evening what has happened, and was also another phase of towards with the hope that Afghanistan, with coming new government, dismantling of Taliban, will get a new dawn. In 2001, the interim administration took place in Afghanistan. the leader, the chair was, the interim government was Hamid. He was elected in 2002 for 2 consecutive terms. In 2014, Ashraf Ghani was elected with the NUK, National Unity Government, with Dr. Abdullah. And that was the year also, 2014, that also formally ended the NATO intervention with, led by the United States of America mission in Afghanistan. And that was also give an opportunity to Taliban to expand their incursion, expand their also influence in rural Afghanistan. The withdrawal of NATO forces with lack of clear command, lack of coordination and cooperation in the international countries with the government, and also with the collaboration of, I would say, is the neighboring countries, the Taliban got strengthened. They have seen the light of, or the glimpse of hope that we will win. That in that 2014, the loss of Afghan National Army forces, the number of casualties increased year by year, which in 2020, the February, the agreement between the government of America and the Taliban, and sidelining the Afghanistan government, or give more boosted the Taliban, and that boost also gave morale boost to Taliban, which led to the surprise taking over of Kabul in 2015, as we said at the beginning. So now it was a little history of what has happened from 1950s and to the 2021, the timeline. I just mentioned the summary. I will just go in depth about what has happened in the last 20 years in Afghanistan. Briefly, there are a lot of good development in Afghanistan. I thought of to highlight some of them here with you. Afghanistan is a dependent country, was and is also, but the efforts of the last 10-15 years brought down aid dependency to 42.9% in 2020. I think that's a good achievement, despite of weak governance, despite of lack of solid infrastructure. I think it was still tangible and good development. There were challenges. With respect of the child mortality, the Afghanistan was the fastest reduction among the low-income countries. In 2019, about 60 children died per 1,000 born. So the child mortality is also reduced. Healthcare, also in the sector of health care, there was much improvement. Nearly half of the Afghan population had access to sanitation, which was 1/4 in the early 2000. The life expectancy was increased to 10 years. However, Afghanistan still lagging behind from the world life expectancy 8 years later. I think in the world it is 8 years still behind from the life expectancy rate. We also had good development in the education sector. In 2001, where the unofficial data, 1 million children were enrolled at the school, which was increased up more. 8.2 million children could go to school, particularly the girls. There was none none of, or I would say, no girls' schools in 2000, 2001, but then reached to the 39% of girls could go to elementary school in Afghanistan. 1/5 of Afghan's civil servants were women. And that is, I think, the great achievement in 2000, 2001. There was, I would say, no space for women to go to work in any sector in Afghanistan, except with very few numbers in health sector or health department. And one of the remarkable achievements that we have had was in the parliamentary system. I think we were leading in the South Asian compared to some of the European countries that 1/4 of parliamentary seats were held by women. And when you compare it to the 2001, that was almost, or not almost, certainly nil. Afghanistan, one of the drawback, the development and also the drawback was the corruption. We could, in the last 20 years, only 10 points got better, and that was in the Transparency International Corruption Index. We stand also in 165 out of 180 in 2020. Afghanistan in the Taliban version 2 or the 2.0, when the Taliban captured or took over Kabul in August 15, 2021, all the non-humanitarian assistance funding were suspended, and all the funds that the Afghanistan had in the international banking system, the United States, and also like World Bank, about 10 million, and the asset has been frozen because the Taliban is not recognized, and there is a fear of that the funds could go to radicalism and also could go in the terrorism activities. So it has been frozen. Lately, half of from 7 billion in a United States Treasury Bank has been trying to release for the development, for the aid, humanitarian aid through UN institution, but still not yet confirmed. It is also a debate. Why half, why not 7 for the humanitarian system? And then there is a question of, we all got in puzzle, the disintegration of 300,000 strong Afghan army have shown completely little resistance only in southern Afghanistan for a couple of weeks. They were dismantled, they were just deserted. Their post across Afghanistan, despite of spending billions of dollars to modernize, to equip, to establish Afghan National Army in the last 20 years. There are several questions yet to be answered, I think. And also one of the drawbacks in one of the worriness is the increase of violation of women's and girls' rights, and that has already increased the gender-based violence in Afghanistan. Child marriages is increased, exploitation and abuse has also multiplied in Afghanistan. That was the immediate effect after the taking over of Taliban in 2021, August 15. And from that up to now, what is the scenario? What the perception is, and what are the realities? According to the United Nations estimate, only 2% of population could have enough to eat. 3.2 million children face acute malnutrition in Afghanistan at the moment. And there is no province today with less than 30% of their population who are either in food emergency, or in the food insecurity. The crisis particularly is mounting on women because of they are barred from to go to work. They are not allowed to work. There are promises. The promises are, I would say, is in theory, but is not yet implemented in praxis or practice. The curtailment of freedom of expression, you might have also heard through media. There is so much suppression, how to suppress the voices of Afghans in Afghanistan by the current regime. It's called Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, commonly known as Taliban. So there are different types of, in different ways, in modes, to curtail, to suppress Afghans' voices. The last but not the least, the Avon Exodus. What has happened, you might have also witnessed in August last year, the tragic moment, the tragic scenes that shock, and also the broken hearts, and millions of Afghans were in tears because of the political turbulences. And it also shows that from one side, the democracy was driven, but we still are winning because of we trying to resist, the nation trying to resist to the civil disobedience in different ways because of the resistance of the ideology to recognize the human rights in Afghanistan. The civil disobedience is confronted with violent, with radical suppression in order to mute the voices. But we hope that the voices are heard, and I hope the global community don't let Afghanistan sidelined or forget what has happened in the last 20 years, the hopes, particularly of the young generation, including myself, that shouldn't be muted and should be also always enlightened so that our voices are heard. Yeah, thank you for the listening. It was not easy to talk about Afghanistan. There's the fresh memories in my mind. It's a flashback to me. I witnessed, and still difficult to digest the moments of last year in what is also now happening, which is not coming in the media. That hurts more because there is the force of the Taliban is how to wipe out the voices of democratic voices, the democratic action in Afghanistan, and replace it by their own ideological radical views in Afghanistan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Hamid, for that talk on Afghanistan, because it's not a general, more than an academic talk. It was a talk by a person from Afghanistan. So that makes it all the more relatable for students here. So, Hamid, now the session is open for interaction. There are like students who have questions for you. And also if there are participants who want to raise questions, they'll be allowed to raise questions, participants online. They'll be allowed to raise questions once the students in the offline mode would raise the questions. So first we'll just give the preference to the students in this college. So we'll just wait.
Hi, sir. I am from BA Economics Department of St. Aloysius College. I am Aljo Rajan. I am here to ask a question. My question is, Even though the Taliban now claim that they are committed to upholding women's rights under Islam, eyewitness accounts from Taliban-controlled areas tell a different story. Women have already been turned away from schools and universities, ordered not to leave their homes without a male guardian, and flogged for breaching Taliban-imposed rules. There have also been reports of forced marriages and targeted attacks against women and girls. What will happen to women and girls in Afghanistan under the Taliban regime in the near future?
Yeah, thanks, Rajan. I think you are also updated about Afghanistan. The Taliban have learned something about 1990s. They were ruling, but now they are also struggling. They are trying. They have learned some tactics how to lie, and also how to, I would say, deceive the global community and also the local community. But with the evolution of internet, they are facing the challenges. Yeah, you're right. The Taliban say that we would try to let Afghan women or girls to the schools or universities under the framework of Islamic Sharia law. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened. The Taliban at the moment, they try what suits them well, what are at their interests. They're like putting drops, but not letting in a flow of the marriages, right? You're right, particularly forced marriages are being implemented. And also marriages, forced marriages, also because of the poverty, the hunger in Afghanistan. Many families had to sell their daughters in order to get food in return, in order to get food security in return, but that is also temporary. And that is signify how difficult the turmoil, the situation is, how dangerous for the people in Afghanistan. Yeah, I don't think the Taliban will let open girls or women free hand. They would try to impose their regulation. Sometimes this is also not in Islam. I know also a little Islam. Maybe they have their own version of Islam. In Islam, there is openness for girls and women and boys, the right to educate. There is no difference, but only those whose deeds are good. From my perspective, the Taliban deeds are absolutely not good. They are not in line of Islam or the Islamic law. They're trying to exercise their power. They try to exercise their own ideology, their own version of Islam. The neutral version of Islam has openness for education, regardless of gender or sex. And also it prohibits forced marriages. Islam also encourages political participation, not only the participation in education, but also political participation, but they are at the moment not giving that. And that shows that they are patriarchally, they're very, very rigid. Hopefully, we hope that with the pressure of global community in not recognizing them unless they don't give the due human rights to the women and girls. So I think the pressure has to be on. Yeah, that is what I try to, I hope your question is addressed, and some of the concern that other students might be having also is addressed.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome, Raj, and all the best in your studies.
Sir, I'm in from St. Aloysius College, B Economics. Fine. I'm Indu from St. Aloysius College, final year, BA Economics. Sir, in Taliban, will people's protest will affect any change? If there are any revolutions occurs in people, from people's side, there will be any change in Taliban rule?
Yeah, thanks, Indu. I think so, yeah. I think the protest or the people power is always useful in positive non-violence. Satyagraha, maybe I think you know better than me in this. I've read also Gandhi, and I've known his principle, this non-violence, but in also freedom of struggle with non-violence. I think Satyagraha is a truth. I don't know, I've forgotten now in Hindi. So non-violence protest is bring results. If you looked at it, a number of times, women, those who were on street fighting for their rights, they were put in behind the bar, but they were released because of the pressure, the mass pressure through using media, through political pressure and support of the global community, international partners, particularly from the UN organization, that has put pressure on Taliban, but I think it's not yet enough to stop. We need to continue political mass protests, mobilization, so that the due rights of girls to go to school, the due rights of women, as I mentioned in the presentation, to work in all social sector as well as in political sphere without fear, without subjugation, without repression. The Taliban has now promised to open the schools from March 2023. That is our new year, the start of the beginning of new year or spring. So they have in the past also made promises. We would see and watch, but we will not stop the political mobilization and also people's participation. I think this has to come within. And what is the difference of 90s and now is 1990s in 2020? Young generation are very active in Afghanistan. The women, I think it was not seen 1990s women's protests on the street, but now we witness not only in Kabul, in other provinces. So we see that is a huge development. The people themselves are coming out and demanding their rights. Just unmute. Very good. Nice. Yeah.
Hi, sir. My name is Aloysius. So my question, Aloysius.
Yeah. Thanks, Aloysius.
Okay. So my question was that what does the people think of Taliban? Do they see them as a terrorist organization, or do they believe that Taliban can do something better what the previous government couldn't do? What does the Afghan citizen feel about Taliban?
Yeah, thank you, Aloysius. What I hear from local and what I hear from my families and friends in Afghanistan, the Taliban, whoever who are against human rights are terrorists. The Taliban and still considered to be a terrorist group, but in the last 20 years, as I mentioned, despite of development, there was corruption, there was flaws in governance. People were tired. From one side was the invasion, the people called it invasion, and I also call the United States would have been nice that they came without arms and help young people the United States started to support mafia, these Islamists in 2001, 2002, they became into power. And that has created mafia, and they become millionaire, billionaire, and the masses of Afghanistan remain in poverty. So the Taliban had got the opportunity to fill that vacuum. They penetrated in rural Afghanistan. Without the support of Afghani people, there is some percentage of people in Afghanistan who supported their movement because of the repression, because of the corruption, because of the weak rule of law, or because of the dual implementation of rule of law. For the haves, I would say, in simple terms, for those who are in power, there was no rule of law. For those who are poor, there is rule of law. So the oppressed people in Afghanistan, some started to join Taliban, and their movement they consider or become a bigger movement. And that, I would say, is this alienation of some masses because of the weak governance by the last 20 years, got opportunity by the Taliban to take over. So there are mistakes, there are errors in Afghanistan by the Western nations, those who help us in Afghanistan. Should they haven't been done or made, we wouldn't have Taliban at the moment in Kabul. Now the question is, could they do better? One thing is the writers, and also we witness from the people from my community in Afghanistan, there is a surprisingly peace. There is no, I would say the clashes or violence between groups because of this insecurity was created by the Taliban themselves. But what is missing is this spiritual or mind peace. That is missing. Poverty has increased. Now it is still the question has to remain to be answered if the Taliban can manage to rule based on democratic values, and that is the demand from the global community and also from myself, that they have to open the door for inclusive governance, inclusive government. They shouldn't retain or restrict the power to themselves. They have to not take all radical leaders, but also those open-minded, and make it also open to other ethnic groups. And the other thing, as I mentioned earlier, is respect to the human rights, respect to the human value, and believe and implement the social justice based on democratic values and principles. We would see, we hope, but I think we need to keep pressuring them.
Sir, I had another question. Sir, America is one of the biggest and most powerful armies in the world. But why do you think America failed to, stop Taliban?
Yeah, I think because of Afghanistan is geographically very is a high in low terrain. Geographically, it's impossible for any power from the Darius I, that was the 500 BC, Darius I, then Alexander, and then the latest in the modern history is the Great Britain and the Soviet Union in the United States. Because of the geographical location, because of this cultural embedded society, because of this this cultural embeddedness, because of this belief in the own values and own system, they don't welcome and they don't see any intruders, any with weapons, or I would say any invaders welcome in Afghanistan. So it's a mindset, is a history. I think we cannot ignore the history in Afghanistan. the reason of failure of the United States, if you look at the 1950s in the Afghanistan history, the Americans, the Germans, or the Westerner, or the Soviet Union, they supported to help build improve the infrastructure in Afghanistan. So the Afghan community in the government, they welcome. I remember from my grandfathers, there was no resistance to that. But the United States, the West got the opportunity to defeat the socialism in Afghanistan, and then their own created or their own planted seeds become enemies for them, because they I would say planted the seeds of radical Islamism, conservatism in Afghanistan in order to defeat socialism, and this they fought the Americans, because the Americans were in 2000 invaded in Afghanistan, supposedly by the Taliban. So idea defeat another idea, and if Taliban also retain to their own radicalization, there will be another group to withstand and defeat them. And before more blood to shed, I think they need to remain open. They need to get open. They need to embrace other groups. They need to overcome their rigidness. They need to overcome their, I would say, is the encircle of all the power structure to themselves. They need to deconstruct themselves from their ideas, and then orient themselves what really Islam is. I think from my understanding, they don't understand. They do understand, but they don't implement the real Islam. So that is my reason the Americans made another big mistake was they were looking for quick fix. The quick fix, the solution for the problem has to come from within, but they brought it from the outside, and from any idea coming from outside in Afghanistan take decades. That was a failure. They should have find a way how to fix the system in Afghanistan within, rather than pasting from outside in Afghanistan.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Have a good study. All the best.
Hi, sir. I'm Devida. We heard that the playing music or singing in the public was banned in Afghan. Is there any issue? Is there any cultural issues for against the music? Why the Taliban against the music?
Thanks, Nivedita. I hope I correctly pronounce your name, Nivedita. Compared to 1990s, they are not breaking the TV sets or radio. However, in eastern Afghanistan, in province called Paktia, they have broken the music instruments. But then the Taliban say we haven't done this. That was the old film or the clip. Now, what is the difference now from the first version of Taliban and the second version of Taliban? They become smarter, and they said we need to advise people, we need to advise and encourage the masses to follow the principles or the values, what is in the culture in Islam is, but we are not going to force somebody. However, there are reports, there are evidences that they force people stopping the music, but in comparison to the 90s, it is different. They have changed their modes of suppression, or they have changed their forms of what they believe is prohibited, how to discourage people. But I've seen my friends also, they could listen music for example, now people could also leave their beard, or they can also shave. So now they are a bit accustomed to, they are a bit mingling. What I see, my young friends in Kabul, they shaved, but still they are not told strictly that you need to keep beard, or they are also without turban. In 90s, you have to have turban. Now there is no turban. The Afghan women, I think they are not strictly asked to cover the face. There are women in Kabul who are not covered, just only with the chadar. Chadar is considered very strictly, but to face the cover is not considered strictly. Moreover, the Taliban, I would say the older age in Taliban ranks in the political leadership, over 70–80%, they are old Taliban. They fought in 80s, they are still in leadership. But these younger generation, there is slight differences. They believe more in advices, more encouragement, rather than to force somebody. And they have learned smart ways how to do that. But I hope that instead of focusing on this sector, better to implement the social justice in human rights, is so that the women could go to work and the women could also enjoy. That would be my hope to them, and that would be my advice to them if I get opportunity to meet them.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Hi, sir. Myself, I am Francis from BA Economics. Sir, my question is, what impact would a surge of US troops in Afghanistan have on the state of the American military after 8 years of continuous war? Am I clear?
Okay, once again, Francis, sorry, I couldn't quite clearly got your question.
What impact would a surge of US troops in Afghanistan have on the state of the American military after 8 years of continuous war?
You mean the impact of the war on US military in United States, or the impact of war in Afghanistan?
Afghanistan.
Okay, yeah, the last 20 years, this impact of military in intervention in Afghanistan is massive. There are not very exact reports. Also, over 500,000, I said in German, and over 500,000 civilians have lost their lives, but still it's not confirmed that if that is 500,000 or almost reaching to 1 million. And moreover, the impact is the sorrow impact is the loss of innocent lives, and the impact is also not having the vision of 2001 of Americans to have democracy and to have development in Afghanistan. The efforts were put, and the corruption got increased, and also the military, the army that was established, about over 300,000. There were ghost military units as well that was not existing in the reality because of the corruption and all. So I think that was not a sincere effort, despite one can argue from the Western perspective that was sincere effort, but the Afghans themselves didn't take that effort seriously and also work for their own nation. But the question is also the power holders in Afghanistan were those who were the radicals of 80s, those become the mafia leader, those abused and used and exploited the power that was bestowed in their hands by the Americans. So I think both are involved of having this current the disturbing situation. The Afghan leaders and also the leaders from political leaders of the West. predominantly the America. I'm sorry to say that's the reality, and I hope we learn lessons from that. I hope that anywhere is intervention and support has to be considered, all the measure to avoid the backfire. The backfire is the uprising of locals and also the backfire of bringing sorrows into a country by shedding blood, innocent blood.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Thank you, Hamid. It was the students actually really have appreciated, this interaction with you. A lot of them were coming forward to interact with you. Now, and also they had many questions, but I think it will keep on going on. Now, I just want to say if there are any online participants who want to pose a question, maybe they can just type in the chat box, or they can just unmute themselves and then ask the resource person if there are any online participants who want to ask anything. Because we have very less online participants, nearly 100 offline participants are here, students are here from, so mostly.
Hello, sir.
Yes, I think there's someone.
Hello, sir. Hamid, sir. What is the situation in Afghanistan about towards the literature now these days? What is the impact on literature?
Just to clarify, what do you mean literature on, in which field you mean?
Literature.
Okay, literature. Journal, could you come again, specifically literature in a journal, say, or in a particular field, you mean, the impact?
Hamid, I think what Sir meant is like the novels, the stories, the writing, that part, the literature part.
Okay, yeah.
Part,
okay,
yeah.
Because I also consider literature and other fields, science. Yeah, I think in the last 20 years, it's in the local language, particularly Pashto, Dari, Uzbek, that has developed, expanded. And also the literature, one of the, as I mentioned in presentation, our literature is unfortunately shaped by the ideology. In the 1980s was more on radicalism, extremism, till 2000, in 90s also, because of the literature particularly was developed also in the university as well. The university was so shaped that the youth could also not divert in another stream. So they kept Islam as a prime focus, their own version of Islam. I think I see the positive effect of this intervention post 2011, 2001, or I would say 9/11. There is a drastic change in the literature. Literature to, I would say, is democracy. Literature was also based on how to the tolerance. Also, if you look at to the linguistic, also it also got the introduction of the linguistic programs in the university. What we had in 50s from different the European studies, Asian studies, that was reintroduced in the universities in Afghanistan. The students got into the literature, the students got into the practice of building societies for literatures, and also publishing books in the local languages, and also translating. Translation is massively improved in the last 20 years, particularly from English, particularly from other major languages like Arabic into the local languages, so that, but what is missing is the culture of is study. The cultures of reading of the literature is not that expanded. I think we needed time to expand that culture, and also, and now I'm very sad that the developments of the last 20 years in the field of literatures, if you look at literature in the history, literature in the culture, literature, historical literature, social, in the social sciences literature, that would be affected by this new regime, the Taliban. They would try to erase, or they would try to edit that. I think that is my worry, and I hope that we keep the momentum what we have had in the last 20 years of literature in all domains. I think literature will also help us to open and develop ourselves.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So if there are any other questions, you can just probably raise it. I've also put in a feedback form, I mean, for those online participants, just in case you want to, you can just probably just put in a feedback.
Hi, sir. This is Dr. Libison of
Hello, Dr.
faculty from Commerce. I don't know whether this question has been raised already or not. When they import Talibanism to Afghanistan, how do they plan to run the economy moving forward? Would it be sustainable model they try to sort of implement? I don't think so. So moving forward, how do they plan to run the economy, which will be a very difficult task for them, especially when they try to import Talibanism to Afghanistan? So any thoughts on it?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Libison. Yeah, Libison. I think it's a very good question. You have a good observation. You rightly said, I agree with you. They're struggling at the moment, know how to run, know how to establish a government with a good governance. I think people would like to have the livelihood opportunities, and they are failing that. And moreover, they are struggling with the professional in all fields. In the field of how to run the government, you need people know how to fix that problems. They have no idea of the technical issues, technicals particularly, and also look at the diplomatic way in how to make and how to have diplomacy with the global and all. There is, I think, they have very lay approach. They are not finding themselves in ease to rule that. And it is not the Afghanistan of the back 90s. It is the youth are well connected. The people are well connected with the world, and they also have the fear a small margin of error will have a backfire. What they have started now, the differences from compared to August last year and now, they're trying to entice those educators, those bright mind people, those professional people, those who have skills to work with them, but they are not yet open to give key position or strategic position to those people. They try to have their own influence of sphere on them. They now open to give a couple of posts in the health department, but not in other departments. They are keeping low position, but not open. I think they will not be able to do unless they open doors for those professionals, for those skilled people who run the government, like Ministry of Finance. It will not be easy. The Ministry of Exterior in also agriculture, I would say, industry and all, commerce, they are just coming from madrasas, and they are coming from, I would say, is from the exterior parts. They are experiencing the struggle. They are now not a group, but now they have seized the Afghanistan. Afghanistan would expect that they deliver what they are expecting. If not, there will be unfortunately a revolt against them as well. So I hope before any violent resistance take place, they listen to the peaceful non-violence protests. They will accept and implement what they have promised to the global community of women's rights, opening of university to women and schools to the girls, and also providing the space to the women to work without fear, and also the young professionals who are in the run, leaving the country, and let them work and without any subjugation. That is my hope. I also have fear. I cannot also go because of with my mindset, my ideas. Who knows? They are in power. If they do something to me, who will ask for me? So I also, I live in Germany, but I'm not able to go now because of, I also have fear. It's my country, I have to help my country, but at the moment I'm not in a position to go because of their way of, or their mode of suppression.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your response to the question.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. This has been quite a productive interaction session. All have been given more light on Afghanistan, especially from a person from Kabul, Afghanistan. I think we are all the more closer to Afghanistan now, after this interaction session. In spite of the fact that from media and all, this has been, Afghan issue has been slowly been sidelined. So, so now, if there are no other questions and queries, we can move on to the conclusion. I now invite Dr. Shelley Johnny from the Political Science Department of our college to propose the vote of thanks. Shelley, sir.
Hello, good afternoon. I am Dr. Shelley Johnny, Assistant Professor of Political Science at St. Aloysius College. So I'm here to deliver the vote of address, the vote of thanks. Sorry. And first, I would like to thank Mr. Hamid Aaqil Shah for agreeing to graciously agreeing to speak to our students on the Afghanistan issue. Because it is very rarely that we get to get access to views from within Afghanistan rather than what we get to hear from the international media and even the national media here in India. So we got the opportunity to get the ground level situation, information about the ground level situation in Afghanistan. And also I would like to thank Mr. Hamid Aaqil Shah for very gratefully agreeing to speak to our dear students and very patiently and graciously answering all of the questions and inquiries from both our students and those who participated in this webinar. So thank you very much for agreeing to be part of this program held in our college. So thank you very much. It was a very informative session for all of us. Next, I would like to thank our principal, Dr. Chaco Joseph, for agreeing to allowing us to hold this program, this college, and providing all his support for this program. Thank you very much, sir, for your support.
Thank you. Thank you.
And next, I would like to thank my colleague, Mr. Melvin Luke George of the Department of History for wholeheartedly ensuring the success, the organizing and success of this program. I've been seeing him like working very hard for organizing this webinar, and also even right down to the minutest details. I just had to stand by the side and just provide the support. The whole show has been organized and conducted by my colleague Melvin Luke George, and for that I would like to wholeheartedly thank him for giving us this opportunity to listen to Mr. Hamid Shah. So I would like to thank him for his efforts. Next, I would like to thank our those who have supported the organizing of this program, such as the Department of Economics, to which we are attached. That is the Department of History and Department of Political Science are working along with the Department of Economics. So we have had full-hearted support from the Department of Economics, especially our head of department, Dr. Jessie John. So I would like to thank the head of Department of Economics, and also Dr. Jins Warki, who has given us full support for the conduct of this program. Next, technically, we have got help from Dr. Libison from the Department of Commerce for the conduct of this program, and also Ms. Vinita Davis, the librarian of our college, and also the office staff who have helped in the technical aspects of this program. So I would like to thank them from the bottom of my heart for all the support that they have provided for this event. And last but not the least, I would like to thank my dear students of BA Economics who have wholeheartedly taken part in this event. They have raised questions, they have clarified their doubts, and wholeheartedly participated in this event. So I would like to thank all of their presence and all of their active presence in as part of this program. So with that, I would like to end my vote of thanks, and thank you all for wholeheartedly cooperating with this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, and I wish all the best, particularly to the students. And I think I really find it useful the students could connect to across the globe with the fields that they are, with the subjects that they are in. I think that will also give them opportunity to interact and also to exchange. And also, I would say, is a direct source of motivation, encouragement, and to bring improvement in their studies and also expand their understanding of the current socio-political economic affairs. I wish you all the best for the opportunity. India has also given me the opportunity to learn and to get myself in a position to study further and to share. I'm thankful to India and all, and I hope we get again the opportunities to interact with you and also with the students.
Yeah. With that, we have come to the end of this program. So thank you all. We'll be signing off.